They told us we would starve in the Arizona desert, but the first thing they offered was a lucky strike. That contradiction, the chasm between Nazi propaganda and American reality, was the first psychological blow struck against the remnants of the Africa Corps. It was a defeat delivered not by shells, but by surplus. May 8th, 1943, somewhere outside Tunis, North Africa. The dust hasn't settled yet from the last artillery barrage when Feldwebel Erich Müller raises his hands above his head. Around him, what remains of the Afrika Korps does the same. 275,000 men who once made the British Empire tremble now stand in ragged lines, waiting to learn their fate. Müller fingers a propaganda leaflet in his pocket, one of thousands dropped by the Luftwaffe before they lost air superiority. It describes American prison camps as death camps, citing starvation rations, medical experiments, mass graves in the Arizona desert. He's memorized every word, preparing himself for what comes next. The American guards approach, and Miller braces for the first blow. Instead, a sergeant from Texas offers him a cigarette. A lucky strike. The German hasn't seen tobacco this good in 6 months. This is the first crack in everything he's been told about America. There will be many more. June 1943, Port of Oran, Algeria. The captured Germans march toward the harbor in columns that stretch for miles. Officers have warned them about the transport ships, floating coffins where they'll be packed like sardines, drinking seawater, fighting over scraps. Some men have already said their goodbyes, certain they'll die in the crossing. But as they approach the docks, something seems wrong. The ships are too big, too many, too grand. These aren't hastily converted freighters or rusting cargo vessels. The USS West Point sits at anchor, fresh gray paint gleaming in the Mediterranean sun. Before the war, she was SS America, pride of the United States lines, a luxury ocean liner that carried movie stars and diplomats. Now she waits to carry the Afrika Korps to captivity. Oberleutnant Franz Schmidt keeps a diary hidden in his boot. That first night aboard, he writes by the light coming through an actual porthole. We have been assigned bunks with mattresses. Real mattresses. The man next to me, a panzer driver from Munich, spent 10 minutes just pressing his hand into his, unable to believe it wasn't straw. The mess hall confuses them even more. Not just the quantity of food, though that alone defies comprehension, but the variety. White bread that isn't mixed with sawdust. Butter that isn't mixed with petroleum. Coffee that's actually coffee, not roasted acorns and chicory root. They're serving portions that would feed a German family for 3 days. An American mess sergeant, annoyed at the long lines, shouts at them to hurry up. We got 12,000 more meals to serve today, so move it along. 12,000 meals in 1 day, on one ship. A captured Luftwaffe pilot named Klaus Fischer watches American sailors throw unopened cans of food overboard because they are past their freshness date. He thinks about his mother in Hamburg, living on 1,500 calories a day. He watches the cans disappear into the Atlantic and realizes something fundamental is broken in his understanding of the world. The ship's doctor, they have multiple doctors, not just medics, begins processing the prisoners. Dental examinations, vision tests. Men with untreated wounds from battles fought months ago finally receive proper surgery. An Oberschütze named Paul Hoffmann has an infected tooth pulled and is given penicillin. Penicillin. Germany reserves that for generals and party officials. The mathematics of the convoy itself tells a story the prisoners are only beginning to grasp. 40 ships travel together. Not 40 ships total in the Atlantic. 40 ships just for this single convoy of prisoners. The USS West Point alone carries 7,000 POWs. Do the multiplication, and the number becomes absurd. This single convoy moves more men than Germany's entire U-boat fleet. Oberleutnant Hans Weber served on a U-boat before his capture. He knows the statistics that the German public doesn't. The Reich started the war with 2,500 merchant vessels. After 3 years of war, they're down to fewer than 500. The Americans. They're building ships faster than anyone can count them. He mentions this to an American guard trying to make conversation. The guard laughs. Buddy, we launched 18 Liberty ships last Monday. 18 inches one day. Weber thinks he's misunderstood the English. 18 ships in a month would be impressive. 18 inches a day is impossible. The guard shows him a week-old copy of the New York Times. The headline celebrates the latest production record from Henry Kaiser's Richmond shipyards. The SS Robert E. Peary. Keel laid to launch. In 4 days, 15 hours, 29 minutes. Weber's last U-boat took 9 months to build. Days pass on the open ocean. The prisoners develop routines. Morning calisthenics on deck. English lessons in the afternoon. Movies in the evening. Actual Hollywood films projected on white sheets. They're watching Casablanca while somewhere beneath them, U-boats hunt desperately for targets. The German prisoners gain weight. This becomes a running joke among the American crew, then a source of deep confusion among the POWs themselves. They're eating better as prisoners than they did as elite combat troops. The Afrika Korps, pride of the Wehrmacht, had been living on canned Italian tomatoes and hard biscuits. Now they're eating fresh eggs and bacon for breakfast. Feldwebel Müller does calculations in his head. If every prisoner on this ship eats like this, and there are 7,000 of them, that's 21,000 meals per day. The ship has been at sea for a week. That's 147,000 meals. And this is just one ship in a convoy of 40. The numbers don't make sense. They can't make sense. But here he sits, drinking his third cup of real coffee of the day, watching the Atlantic roll by through a window that isn't barred. July 15th, 1943. Approaching New York Harbor, dawn. The prisoners are ordered on deck before sunrise. The American guards want them to see something. At first, there's only ocean and morning mist. Then, emerging from the haze like something from a fever dream, they see lights. Thousands of lights. Millions of lights. A city that glows like it doesn't know there's a war on. Because for New York, there really isn't one. No blackout curtains, no air raid sirens, no bomb shelters. The Empire State Building stands illuminated from base to antenna, a 1,250 feet middle finger to the entire concept of aerial bombardment. In Berlin, a single light showing after dark brings immediate arrest. Here, Times Square burns with enough neon to guide in an entire bomber fleet. Gefreiter Friedrich Becker served in the London Blitz. He knows what a city under siege looks like. This isn't it. This is something else entirely. A city that treats war as a distant inconvenience. Something happening to other people, somewhere else. The smell hits them next. Not cordite or burning rubber or the sweet stench of decay that follows every European city. Instead, bread from commercial bakeries running night shifts, coffee from roasting plants, chocolate, actual chocolate from factories that never stop production. A prisoner from Cologne starts crying. He hasn't smelled fresh bread in 2 years. The Statue of Liberty passes on their starboard side. German propaganda had very specific things to say about this monument. A gift from revolutionary France, celebrating the mongrel nation that would collapse under its own decadence. But the prisoners aren't looking at the statue. They're looking at what surrounds it. Ships. The harbor is choked with them. Cargo vessels, tankers, destroyers, cruisers, aircraft carriers, troop transports, hospital ships, ships being loaded, ships being unloaded, ships waiting their turn because there aren't enough berths for them all. A former logistics officer begins counting. He stops at 300. They haven't even reached the dock. In 1943, American shipyards are producing vessels at a rate that defies comprehension. While the POWs stand at the rails trying to process what they're seeing, American workers are completing another Liberty ship every 8 hours, launching a new destroyer every 3 days, finishing an aircraft carrier every month, building more submarines in a quarter than Germany manages in a year. But the prisoners don't know these statistics yet. They only know what they can see, and what they see makes no sense. They dock at Staten Island. The pier stretches for what seems like miles, with motorized cranes moving cargo that would take hundreds of men to shift by hand. Stevedores black and white working side by side, another impossibility according to Nazi racial theory. unload more tonnage in an hour than the port of Bremen handles in a day. The dock workers wear better clothes than most German civilians. Clean work uniforms, leather boots without holes. One drives past in a Ford truck, eating a sandwich thick with meat. He tosses the crust to the seagulls. Military police arrive to escort them to the trains. Müller expects cattle cars, the kind he'd seen loading French prisoners. Instead, Pullman coaches, cushioned seats, glass windows that actually open, dining cars with white tablecloths. An American sergeant checks his clipboard and shouts, "All right, fellows, we got a long ride ahead. Lunch is at noon, dinner at 6. Try to get some sleep. We won't reach camp until tomorrow afternoon." Meals on a prison train with a schedule. July 16th, 1943. Pennsylvania Railroad leaving New Jersey. The train accelerates smoothly to 80 miles per hour. German trains haven't reached half that speed since 1941. No coal for the engines, no steel for track repairs, no tracks left unbombed in most of the Reich. Through the windows, America unfolds like an industrial hallucination. Factories stretch to the horizon, not camouflaged, not hidden, not underground. They operate in broad daylight with smokestacks sending pillars of black smoke into the sky, begging to be bombed by aircraft that will never come. A captured Wehrmacht sergeant named Otto Steinberg begins counting smokestacks from his window seat. By the time they leave New Jersey, he's reached 200. Each one represents a factory producing something for the war effort. Or worse, not for the war effort. Some are making consumer goods, automobiles for civilians, refrigerators, washing machines. America is fighting a two-front global war and still manufacturing appliances. They pass through Philadelphia. A sign at a Chrysler plant boasts of production figures that would be classified as state secrets in Germany. 15,000 tank engines and counting. Another factory advertises, "Proud builders of B-29 Superfortress components. 3 shifts, 7 days a week." 3 shifts. German factories barely manage one. When they have materials, when they have workers, when the RAF isn't turning them into rubble. The train's dining car serves lunch. Real meat, not horse, not rabbit, but beef. Fresh vegetables, white bread with butter, apple pie for dessert. Apple pie. The prisoners eat in confused silence. A younger Gefreiter asks an American guard if this is special food meant to impress them. The guard looks genuinely puzzled. Special. This is just regular dining car food. Wait until you see what they serve at the camp. Outside, Pennsylvania rolls past. No bomb craters, no burned villages, no refugees on the roads. Instead, cornfields that stretch beyond the horizon. Dairy farms with hundreds of cattle. Orchards heavy with fruit. Franz Schmidt writes in his diary, "We pass more farmland in 1 hour than exists in all of Bavaria, and no one is harvesting. Machines do everything. We saw one man on a single machine harvest what would take 50 men in Germany." The mathematical reality of American agriculture in 1943. 6 million farm tractors, while Germany has 280,000. Average wheat yields 17 bushels per acre, compared to Germany's 11. One American farmer feeds 13 people, while in Germany one farmer feeds 4. Total agricultural output, enough to feed America, Britain, and half of Russia. But the Germans don't need statistics. They can see it from the train. Field after field, farm after farm, food growing faster than anyone can eat it. They pass a small town in Pennsylvania. Coal country. Even here, in what Americans would consider working-class poverty, the signs of plenty mock everything the prisoners believed. Cars parked outside modest homes. Personal automobiles for miners and factory workers. Electric lights in every window. A Coca-Cola billboard advertising ice-cold refreshment. Ice cold in July. As if refrigeration is so common, it can be wasted on flavored sugar water. Night falls, the train continues west. The prisoners try to sleep but can't stop staring out the windows. America glows in the darkness. Every town blazes with electricity. No one fears the bombers. No one ever will. July 17th, 1943. Approaching Pittsburgh at dawn. They smell it before they see it. Not the familiar stench of war, burning oil, cordite, death, but something else. Steel. Thousands of tons of steel being forged simultaneously. Pittsburgh rises from the river valleys like something from Wagner's operas if Wagner had dreamed of industry instead of gods. The prisoners stand at the windows in silence. This single city appears to produce more steel than the entire Ruhr Valley. It does. Pittsburgh alone in 1943 will produce 31 million tons of steel. All of Germany at its peak managed 22 million. The scale breaks their frame of reference. A single mill stretches for 3 miles along the river. Another sprawls across the opposite bank. The sky glows orange from furnaces that never cool. Trains heavy with ore arrive every few minutes. Barges loaded with coal crowd the rivers. Hauptmann Erich Zimmermann had been a production manager at Krupp before the war. He knows what he's looking at, and it terrifies him. He counts 47 blast furnaces from his window. Germany has 91 total. This is one city. America has dozens like it. The train stops for coal and water. American workers taking their lunch break wave at the prisoners. They're eating sandwiches thick with meat, drinking bottles of milk, smoking cigarettes. One throws a pack of Lucky Strikes through an open window. "For you, boys," he shouts. "War will be over soon." The casual certainty in his voice is more demoralizing than any propaganda. The journey continues west through Ohio. Here, the prisoners encounter something that finally makes them understand the hopelessness of Germany's position. Willow. From the train, it looks like a city-sized building because that's what it is. The Ford Motor Company's B-24 Liberator plant covers 3.5 million square feet. The assembly line is a mile long. At its peak, it will employ 42,000 workers. A sign visible from the train reads, "Current rate, 1 bomber every 63 minutes. Luftwaffe pilot Klaus Fischer does the math. That's nearly 23 aircraft per day from one factory. Germany's entire aviation industry produces 25 fighters per day. The train passes the parking lot. Thousands of cars. The workers building bombers to destroy Germany drive their own personal automobiles to work. In Germany, only party officials have cars. Here, factory workers complain about finding parking spots. July 18th, 1943. Crossing into Illinois, the prisoners wake to find themselves in an ocean of corn. It stretches in every direction, beyond every horizon. More corn in view from this single train window than Germany will harvest this year. They pass a John Deere factory. Through the windows, they can see assembly lines producing tractors, not tanks disguised as tractors, which is what Germany does. Actual agricultural equipment in the middle of a war. At a water stop, local Red Cross volunteers board the train with coffee and donuts. The German prisoners stare in confusion. These are civilians, American civilians, giving food to enemy prisoners for free. An elderly woman presses a Bible into Miller's hands. "For your comfort," she says in accented German. She's from Milwaukee, second-generation German-American. Her son is fighting in Italy. She's giving coffee to men who might have shot at him. Chicago's skyline appears on the horizon. If New York was shocking, Chicago is incomprehensible. Another untouched city, another industrial giant. The stockyards alone process enough meat to feed multiple armies. The smell of beef carries for miles. They pass the Pullman factory where their own prison train car was built. A sign announces 2,000 troop sleepers completed. They're mass-producing luxury prison transportation. A guard mentions casually that they're taking the long route to avoid congesting main lines. America has so many rail lines they can afford to route entire prison trains on secondary tracks. The statistics of American rail in 1943, 230,000 miles of track compared to Germany's 36,000, 26,000 locomotives, while Germany has 8,000. 1.8 million freight cars versus Germany's 450,000, moving 1.4 billion tons of freight annually. But one image captures it better than all statistics. At a switchyard in Iowa, the prisoners count 127 trains waiting, just waiting, because there's so much cargo to move. Even America's vast rail network experiences traffic jams. July 20th, 1000. 943. Aliceville, Alabama. The train slows as it approaches what the prisoners expect to be their hell. They've steeled themselves for barbed wire, guard towers, dogs. What they find is all of that, and also something unimaginable. Camp Aliceville sprawls across 800 acres of Alabama countryside. It's a small city built specifically for them. Clean barracks with windows and electricity, flush toilets, hot showers, a hospital that would serve a German division, recreation facilities, a library, a theater. The camp commander, Colonel Thompson, addresses them through a translator. Gentlemen, you are prisoners of war under the Geneva Convention. You will be treated accordingly. Follow the rules, and your stay here will be comfortable. Welcome to Aliceville. Comfortable? He used the word comfortable. The barracks are a revelation enough. Solid construction with insulation and heating. Electric lights with switches that actually work. Each man gets his own bunk with a mattress, sheets, a pillow, and 2 blankets. In the Russian POW camps, German guards give Soviet prisoners straw if they're lucky. But it's the mess hall that breaks something fundamental in their worldview. Breakfast, eggs, bacon, toast, butter, jam, coffee with cream and sugar. Lunch, meat, potatoes, vegetables, bread, dessert. Dinner, another full meal with options. Options. The daily caloric intake 3,500 calories. German civilians get 1,500. German soldiers at the front get 2,500 when supply lines work. Unteroffizier Schmidt writes, "We eat better than my family has eaten in 3 years. I feel guilt with every bite." The camp store, they have a store, sells items that have been fantasies in Germany since 1941. Chocolate, cigarettes, Coca-Cola, ice cream. The prisoners are paid for their work in camp script, 80 cents per day. Enough to buy luxuries that German generals can't obtain. On the 3rd day, ice cream trucks arrive. Actual ice cream trucks like those that service American neighborhoods. The prisoners think it's a trick, a propaganda photo opportunity. But the trucks come twice a week, every week. A prisoner named Johann Braun, a factory worker from Essen, tastes chocolate ice cream and begins laughing uncontrollably. He laughs until he cries. When asked why, he explains his daughter, born in 1940, has never tasted chocolate. She never will if Germany wins. She's living on turnips and sawdust bread while he eats ice cream in Alabama. The medical facilities surpass anything the Wehrmacht provides its own troops. X-ray machines, surgical suites, dental chairs, medicines. Germany reserves for the elite. A prisoner named Hans Vogel has an appendectomy performed by an American surgeon with penicillin for the infection. In Germany, he would have died. The camp dentist, Captain Morrison, mentions offhandedly that he's filled over 3,000 cavities in 6 months. German POWs arrive with mouths full of rot from years of poor diet and no dental care. America fixes their teeth for free. The camp newspaper, they're allowed their own newspaper, publishes statistics from home. Germany celebrates producing 2,000 tanks in a month. The same week, the camp screening room shows a newsreel of the Detroit tank arsenal. One factory producing 1,000 tanks per month. The prisoners watch in silence. Education programs begin immediately. English classes, American history, mathematics, engineering. The Americans want them to learn. They provide textbooks, materials, qualified instructors. Some prisoners will earn high school diplomas. Others begin college correspondence courses. The camp library stocks 15,000 books, German books, including authors banned in Germany. Men, prisoners who haven't read freely in a decade, gorge themselves on literature. The sports facilities, soccer fields, volleyball courts, gymnastic equipment, weekend tournaments with prizes, German POWs playing football while German cities burn. But it's the small things that accumulate into despair. Light bulbs that never run out, windows that keep rain out, toilets that flush every time, water that's always clean, matches that always light, soap that actually cleans, razors that actually cut, clothes washed with machines, beds without lice, food without rot. A captured U-boat officer writes to his family through the Red Cross. I'm safe. I'm well fed. We are treated with dignity. The German censors don't believe it. They mark his letter as contaminated by propaganda and don't deliver it. August 1943. Cotton harvest season. The POWs are offered agricultural work at prevailing wages. It's voluntary, but most accept. They need to see if what they witnessed from the train was real or hallucination. It's real. It's worse than real. They're trucked to cotton fields that dwarf entire German provinces. But it's not the scale that breaks their understanding. It's the machinery. One mechanical cotton picker does the work of 50 men. The plantation has 12 of them. A prisoner named Erich Hoffmann, a farmer from Prussia, watches a combine harvester process more wheat in an hour than his entire village manages in a day. The American operator, barely out of his teens, eats a sandwich while driving, casual as if piloting miraculous technology is mundane. Because in America, it is mundane. The numbers that define American agricultural supremacy. In 1943, 1.5 million miles of paved roads, connecting farms to markets. 4.5 million trucks moving agricultural products. 90% of farms electrified while Germany has only 15%. Fertilizer used 20 million tons compared to Germany's 2 million tons. They work alongside German-American farmers who speak their language, share their heritage, but inhabit a different universe. These farmers own land measured in hundreds of acres. They drive personal trucks. Their children attend high school instead of working fields. Their wives have washing machines, refrigerators, electric stoves. One farmer, Wilhelm Miller, Americanized from Müller, invites a work crew for Sunday dinner. His farmhouse has indoor plumbing, central heating, a radio in every room, and a television. A television in rural Alabama on a farm. The meal breaks several prisoners completely. Roast beef, mashed potatoes, green beans, corn, fresh bread, apple pie, ice cream. This is normal Sunday dinner for a farming family. In Germany, this meal would require 6 months of ration cards. Miller's son shows them his bedroom. Model airplanes hang from the ceiling. B-17, P-51, P-38. Toys of the machines, destroying Germany. The boy has more toys than most German children have seen food in years. The work continues through harvest season. The POWs learn that America throws away more food than Germany produces. Fruit left to rot because it's not perfect enough for market. Milk poured into fields because there's too much. Grain burned because storage facilities are full. A prisoner named Josef Hartmann, an economist before the war, calculates on scraps of paper. American agricultural waste could feed Austria. The food used for American pets could sustain Bavaria. The grain used for American alcohol production could prevent famine in East Prussia. September 1943. Industrial work details. Some prisoners are assigned to local factories. What they find completes their ideological collapse. A textile mill employs 300 women, each operating machinery that would require a dozen German workers. They produce uniforms, millions of uniforms, in patterns and quantities that assume infinite armies. But it's the aluminum plant that delivers the final blow to any hope of German victory. Aluminum is the bottleneck of aircraft production. Germany scrapes and hoards every ounce. Here, in one Alabama facility, they produce more aluminum in a month than Germany manages in 6. The workers complain about overtime. They want to go fishing. The plant manager, showing off to a military inspector, mentions they're operating at 60% capacity. They could produce more, but there's already a surplus. America has too much aluminum. The POWs assigned here do the calculations. This one plant could supply the entire Luftwaffe. America has dozens of similar facilities. The war is already over. It's been over since before it started. Germany just doesn't know it yet. December 1943. Christmas approaches. The prisoners expect nothing. In German POW camps, Russian prisoners are dying at a rate of 3,000 per day from starvation and exposure. Surely American kindness has limits. It doesn't. Care packages arrive from the International Red Cross, but also from local churches, from the Salvation Army, from American citizens who adopt prisoners for the holidays. Erich Müller receives a package from a widow in Massachusetts whose son died at Kasserine Pass. She sends cookies, cigarettes, and a note. No mother should wonder if her son is hungry at Christmas. The camp organizes a Christmas market. Prisoners with woodworking skills make toys. Others paint pictures. They sell these for camp script to buy gifts for each other. The absurdity of it, POWs exchanging Christmas presents while their cities burn, isn't lost on them. Christmas Eve arrives with a feast that defies description. Turkey, ham, stuffing, potatoes, vegetables, pies, cakes, wine. Actual wine. German guards on the Eastern Front are eating frozen horse meat if they're lucky. Here, German prisoners toast with California wine. The camp commander arranges for a Christmas service. A German Lutheran minister from Mobile conducts it in German. Prisoners sing Silent Night. American guards sing along. Some cry. Everyone pretends not to notice. Local families invite small groups of prisoners for Christmas dinner. It's voluntary, supervised, and surreal. German prisoners of war sit at American tables, eating with American families whose sons and fathers fight Germans across 2 oceans. A prisoner named Friedrich Bauer writes, "The enemy shows us more kindness than our own government showed us. They treat us better as prisoners than we were treated as soldiers." What does this mean? January 1944. The re-education begins, not through propaganda or force, but through simple exposure to American democracy. Prisoners hold elections for camp positions. Real elections, with secret ballots, multiple candidates, peaceful transitions of power. They're shown films, not propaganda films, but Hollywood entertainment and newsreels. They watch America argue with itself. Congressional debates, newspaper editorials, criticizing Roosevelt, comics mocking military leaders. In Germany, a joke about Hitler means death. Here, insulting the president is evening entertainment. They start to understand something profound. America's strength doesn't come from unity of thought, but from chaos of opinion, somehow directed toward common purpose. The camp library adds American newspapers. Prisoners read about labor strikes in defense plants. In Germany, strikers would be shot. Here, the government negotiates. The planes still get built. Somehow the system works. Black American soldiers guard the camp. The Nazi racial worldview says these men should be inferior, servile, weak. Instead, they're professional soldiers who treat prisoners with dignity while serving the nation that's destroying Germany. The cognitive dissonance is unbearable. A prisoner named Wilhelm Schneider, indoctrinated since childhood in racial theory, works alongside a black sergeant who teaches him to drive a truck. The sergeant is patient, professional, kind. He shares his lunch. He tells jokes. He mentions his son is studying engineering at Howard University. Every interaction breaks another piece of Nazi ideology. March 1944. Mail arrives from Germany. The letters bring reality crashing back. Hamburg, 45,000 dead in a single night of bombing. Berlin, 350,000 homeless. Cologne ceased to exist as a functioning city. Muller's wife writes in code to avoid censors. Uncle Harris visits nightly means RAF bombing. Coffee is plentiful means there's no food. The children grow strong means they're starving. The contrast between their American plenty and German suffering creates a psychological torture no guard could devise. They eat 3 meals while their families starve. They sleep warm while their cities freeze. They live while their nation dies. Some prisoners stop eating, overwhelmed by guilt. The American doctors treat them for depression, providing psychiatric care that doesn't exist in German military medicine. The humanity makes it worse. A prisoner named Otto Weber receives word that his entire family died in the Hamburg firestorm. That night, the Americans show a film in the recreation hall, a musical comedy about sailors on leave. The prisoners watch Americans laugh and sing while Germany burns. The war isn't even serious enough to interrupt entertainment. The camp production of machinery continues its relentless count. Every week, newsreels show more American production. 96,000 aircraft in 1944, while Germany manages 25,000. 29,000 tanks compared to Germany's 3,800. 17 aircraft carriers. While Germany has 0. 203 submarines, compared to Germany's 31. But abstract numbers pale against concrete reality. The prisoners work, they eat, they sleep in warm beds, and they know their country is dying from an overdose of American abundance. May 1944. D-Day approaches. The prisoners sense something massive approaching. Train traffic increases. The local airfield roars with bomber formations heading east to collection points. America is gathering its strength for something immense. When news of the invasion breaks, the prisoners huddle around radios. 6,000 ships, 11,000 aircraft, 150,000 men in the first wave. The numbers are impossible. Germany couldn't gather 600 ships. A Wehrmacht colonel in the camp does the arithmetic out loud. If they can land 150,000 men in one day and sustain them and reinforce them, then he doesn't finish. Everyone knows the conclusion. The American guards are almost apologetic about their victory. No gloating, no celebration in front of prisoners, just quiet confidence that the war's end is now mathematics, not combat. August 1944, the POWs tour a Liberty ship. In what seems like psychological warfare but is actually American openness, prisoners volunteer for dock work in Mobile. They'll load Liberty ships heading for Europe. The Germans agree, desperate to see if the naval production figures are real. They're real. The SS John W. Brown sits at dock, one of 3 ships launched that day. The shipyard builds them in sections. Welding instead of riveting. Assembly line construction of 10,000-ton vessels. A prisoner named Karl Hoffman, a former shipyard worker from Hamburg, examines the welds. They're crude by German standards, functional rather than crafted. But that's the point. America doesn't build perfect ships. It builds infinite, adequate ships. The loading process is another revelation. Cranes stack trucks like toys. Entire rail cars disappear into holds. Tanks are lined up like automobiles in a parking lot. In 4 hours, they load more military equipment than a German division possesses. The manifest, carelessly left visible, lists the cargo: 440 trucks, 24 tanks, 180 tons of ammunition, 500 tons of food, 200 tons of medical supplies. One ship, one of hundreds leaving American ports this week. The dock worker mentions casually that this is a slow day. Last week they loaded 6 ships simultaneously. The bottleneck isn't production or cargo. It's running out of crews to sail them. October 1944. Cotton harvest again. But this time, the POWs understand what they're seeing. The same fields, the same machines, the same abundance. Nothing has changed. 3 years of war, and American agriculture hasn't even mobilized fully. A farmer mentions his son just got drafted. He's not worried about production. I'll just buy another tractor. Buy another tractor. As if they're available in stores, which the prisoners learn they are. The Sears catalog becomes a document of despair among the POWs. 600 pages of consumer goods available for mail order during total war. Furniture, clothing, appliances, toys, radios, guns for hunting. An entire civilization's material culture delivered to your door while that civilization fights a global war. Page 487 advertises tractors order by mail. Delivered by rail. Easy credit terms available. Germany can't produce tank parts. America sells farm equipment through catalogs. November 1944. Re-education accelerates. The camp shows films from liberated concentration camps. The German prisoners deny it. Propaganda. They insist. Atrocity propaganda like the last war. But doubt creeps in. They've learned American abundance is real. American kindness is real. If those are real, what else might be? A prisoner named Ernst Wagner, an SS officer before capture, maintains rigid ideology. until he works alongside a Jewish American guard. Private David Rosenberg from Brooklyn treats him with professional courtesy, shares cigarettes, discusses baseball. His brother is with Patton's army, killing Germans, while David guards Germans with patience and humanity. Wagner's worldview, built on Jewish conspiracy theories, can't process Rosenberg's simple decency. The Jews should be scheming, manipulating, corrupting. Instead, he teaches Wagner to play poker and shares letters from his mother. The camp holds a mock election in November 1944, paralleling the American presidential election. Prisoners debate, campaign, vote. Roosevelt wins, even among German POWs. Democracy becomes entertainment. But it's the small revelations that accumulate into transformation. A guard brings his pregnant wife to visit, trusting enemy prisoners with his family. Local children wave at prison work crews like their neighbors. A Baptist church holds services for Protestant prisoners. The camp doctor works through the night to save a prisoner's life. Jewish welfare organizations send care packages to German prisoners of war. Each kindness is a crack in the ideological wall. December 1944. Battle of the Bulge. News arrives. Germany's last offensive. The prisoners feel momentary hope. Perhaps the wonder weapons are real. Perhaps the Führer has a plan. The American guards seem unconcerned. One mentions his nephew is in Bastogne. He'll be fine. We're sending everything. Germans can't stop what we're sending. What they're sending: 500,000 reinforcements, 6,000 tanks, 100,000 vehicles, enough ammunition to fire continuously for months, supplies to rebuild an entire army group. Within 3 weeks, the offensive collapses, not from German weakness, but from American abundance. You can't defeat an enemy who replaces losses faster than you can inflict them. April 1945, the Third Reich collapses. News arrives in fragments. Roosevelt dies. Hitler calls him the miracle that will save Germany. The prisoners who've lived in America's shadow for 2 years know better. They've seen the machine. Roosevelt was just one operator. The machine continues. Then the impossible news. Hitler is dead. Berlin falls. Germany surrenders. The prisoners feel nothing. No shock. No surprise. They knew. They've known since they saw the first Liberty ship, since the first ice cream truck, since the aluminum plant. The war was over before they arrived. It just took Germany 2 years to realize it. But now comes a different fear. What happens to them? Will American kindness extend past victory? May 8th, 1945, VE Day. The camp erupts in American celebration. The guards get drunk. Someone gives prisoners beer. German POWs and American guards drink together to the end of a war that was never in doubt once you saw the factories. No revenge, no punishment. The guards, who lost brothers, fathers, friends to German guns, share their victory bourbon with the men who might have pulled those triggers. A guard from Texas, drunk and philosophical, tells Mueller, "You boys never had a chance. Nothing personal. We just make too much stuff. Too much stuff. That's what defeated the Wehrmacht, the Luftwaffe, the Kriegsmarine. Too much stuff." Repatriation begins. The POWs don't want to leave. Germany is ruins and starvation. America is plenty and peace, but international law demands their return. They board ships better than those that brought them. America doesn't even diminish its generosity and victory. Each man receives new clothes, shoes, food packages, cigarettes to trade, and seeds for planting. Seeds. The Americans give their defeated enemies seeds to rebuild. Erich Müller stands at the rail watching America recede. 2 years ago, he arrived believing in the master race. He leaves understanding Germany was never fighting America. It was fighting American production, American agriculture, American democracy, American kindness. The Atlantic crossing reverses from abundance to ruins, from democracy to occupation, from ice cream to starvation. June 1946. Bremenhaven. Germany is moonscape. Cities don't exist. Industry doesn't exist. Government doesn't exist. But 375,000 POWs return from America carrying impossible memories. They tell stories nobody believes. Ice cream in prison camps. Germans electing their own leaders. Jewish guards treating SS officers with dignity. Black soldiers as professionals. Factories that never stop. Farms that feed the world. They're called traitors. Brainwashed. Corrupted. By comfort. But they know what they know. America isn't what Germany taught. Democracy isn't weakness. Diversity isn't decay. Kindness isn't conquest. In the American occupation zone, former POWs become translators, administrators, bridges between occupiers and occupied. They understand Americans. They've lived in the beast's belly and found it warm. Franz Schmidt becomes mayor of his rebuilt town. He implements American practices, town meetings, transparent budgets, elected positions democracy, learned in an Alabama prison camp. Klaus Fischer opens a grocery store on the American model. Customer service, fair prices, no bribes business as democracy. Ernst Wagner, the former SS officer, teaches school. American history, democratic principles, racial tolerance. His students think he's insane. He continues anyway. The Berlin airlift. When Stalin blockades Berlin, American planes deliver food to the city that tried to destroy democracy. Former POWs aren't surprised. They remember the waste, the excess, the casual plenty. America feeds its enemies because it can. One plane lands every 45 seconds. 13,000 tons of supplies daily. More than the entire German rail system moved at its peak. The POWs tell anyone who will listen. This is nothing for them. They could do 10 times this. The economic miracle. West Germany rebuilds on American principles learned in prison camps. Former POWs lead industries. They know mass production. They've seen automation. They understand consumption as democracy. Erich Müller runs a factory. He implements American methods. Worker safety, fair wages, production incentives. His competitors call him soft. His factory outproduces them 3-1. The Marshall Plan pours money into Germany. Americans rebuild their defeated enemy. The POWs aren't surprised. They remember Christmas dinners with families whose sons they might have killed. A nation that kind doesn't stay vengeful. By 1960, West Germany is Europe's strongest economy, built on American methods, led by men who learned democracy in Alabama, Texas, Arkansas, men who discovered in prison that everything they believed was wrong. In 1975, Erich Müller, now retired, writes to the Aliceville Chamber of Commerce, 30 years ago, I arrived at your town as an enemy prisoner. I expected hatred. I found hospitality. I expected starvation. I found abundance. I expected humiliation. I found dignity. You taught us that democracy wasn't weakness but strength. That diversity wasn't pollution but power. That kindness wasn't foolishness but wisdom. We returned to Germany carrying these lessons. We rebuilt our nation on principles learned in your prison camps. The economic miracle you read about. It began in Aliceville. You defeated us not with arms but with ice cream trucks. Not with hatred but with humanity. Not with scarcity but with surplus. We were not destroyed by American bombs. We were transformed by American abundance. Thank you for teaching us we were wrong about everything. Thank you for showing us a better way. Thank you for the ice cream. America fed its own population without rationing meat, gasoline, or coffee. The entire British population, 25% of Soviet military calories, 375,000 German POWs, better than their own army. Liberated populations across 2 continents. America built the atomic bomb while building everything else. Sufficient ships to replace all losses twice over. The entire infrastructure of modern warfare. And after victory, America rebuilt its enemies, fed its former foes, and created the world order that transformed former fascists into Democrats. The German POWs learned the final lesson. America wins wars not through superior soldiers, but through superior sandwiches. Not through hatred, but through hospitality. Not through destruction, but through production. They mocked America. Then they saw its factories,